The civil rights movement in the 1960s achieved progress which we Americans are still benefiting from and fighting to protect today. One of the greatest leaders of that movement was a woman whose influence and vision are too often overlooked. Here are 5 extraordinary things about that woman, Dorothy Height. Number 1, she helped organize the March on Washington. Dorothy Height was a leader in the Black Civil Rights Movement for most of her life, but her most visible contribution was probably the role she played in 1963's March on Washington, which she helped to organize. That's her, standing close to Martin Luther King as he delivers his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, probably imagining how badass her speech would have been had she been invited to give one. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Dorothy Height was a special woman, and one of the things that made her so special was that she didn't just fight against racial inequality. Number 2, she fought against racism and sexism. Height spent her life advocating for the rights of her fellow black folks and her fellow women. She believed that black equality and women's equality were inextricably linked and that one could never be fully realized without the other. She once said, quote, "A Negro woman has the same kind of problems as other women, but she can't take the same things for granted," which is as succinct and eloquent a statement about the importance of intersectionality as I have ever heard. In 1964, she created Wednesdays in Mississippi, a program which brought women from the North and women from the South together to discuss ways to tear down racial and religious barriers in their communities. And speaking of that, number 3, she pushed for integration. Part of the mission of Wednesdays in Mississippi was to promote racial integration, but 2 decades before that, Dorothy Height worked for the YWCA, where she oversaw the nationwide desegregation of all of its facilities. Later, when she was a prominent figure within the civil rights movement, she used that position to pressure President Dwight Eisenhower to desegregate public schools. This was a principled stand on her part, of course, but she also knew from her own experience how damaging segregation could be. As a young woman, she was denied entry into Barnard College because of the school's unofficial policy of only admitting 2 black students per year. In 2004, on the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, Barnard officially honored Dorothy Height as an honorary alumna of the school. Better late than never, I guess. Number 4, she lobbied for black women to be leaders. In her memoir, Open Wide, The Freedom Gates, Height writes of the frustration she felt toward the men who joined her in planning the March on Washington. Her male fellow organizers were, she writes, quote, "happy to include women in the human family, but there was no question as to who headed the household." Height pushed against this dismissive patriarchal attitude within black communities, just as she fought for racial and gender equality across the board. She pressured President Lyndon Johnson to appoint black women to positions in government, and in 1971, along with Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Shirley Chisholm, Betty Friedan, and others, she founded the National Women's Political Caucus, an organization dedicated to increasing women's participation and representation in politics. Number 5, she spent her life fighting for equality. Dorothy Height lived to be 98 years old. She stood alongside Martin Luther King on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and she sat on the platform at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. Even after stepping down as president of the National Council of Negro Women, a position she held for 40 years, Height kept an office in the headquarters of that organization in Washington, D.C., and she continued to visit it on a daily basis. She used to say, "If the times aren't ripe, you've got to ripen the times." Dorothy Height devoted her life to doing just that, and to teaching the rest of us that we should be doing it too. Because of that, she had not merely a long life, but a consequential one. The hardest part's picking only 5. Catch you next time. Hey folks, hope you found this video to be worthwhile. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.